done. Really, a lot done. In fact, UK, we signed a.
You can't handle the truth.
Resolve to resist. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. This is your host, David Krayden. I'm broadcasting to you live from Ottawa. Sean Rickard couldn't make it. I hope a lot of you are not going to be too disappointed and tune out. We've got more to show you about the state of the Canadian economy, what's happening in Edgewood, BC at the Ostrich farm, and a lot of other things. So don't be disappointed. We'll have Sean back. He had some issues to deal with this morning. And so we will revisit that. And of course, the trial starts next week. We'll be right back with more.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. Well, no. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Well, as they say in the entertainment business, the show must go on. And the show does go on. I just had to delay things for an hour. That's the one luxury you have on the internet, is you can reschedule your show. If you're doing it live, you can reschedule it. You can't do that when you're doing television. You got to go on if you're doing live TV, of course. And that's for most news is still live. So you got to go on. But thankfully, I think we've pulled together some great material here. And so I wanted to go into that. Like, we'll be talking about the latest, shall we say, weirdness from the Universal Ostrich farms. And I mentioned last night, I was talking to somebody, one of the supporters on the farm last night. And I said, things get weirder and more haunting and horrifying out there every day. And it's almost apropos that we're approaching Halloween, of course, which is tomorrow. So, that's how it's going here. And of course, if you saw that little video at the start, that is horrifying as well, because that's all about Brookfield Asset Management, the company that Mark Carney headed just before he got into politics. They got an $80 billion contract that they're sharing with Cameco, and it's not clear how much Westinghouse, U.S., is getting from this. But this is a government-financed contract to build nuclear reactors. So once again, it's a partnership between the private sector and the public sector. Obviously, nuclear reactors are under the governance of the United States government. So what's going on here? This is what I want to know. We are in a black hole of corruption in this country. Clearly, Mark Carney could benefit from this deal at some point. Yeah, I know he's at an arm's length right now, supposedly, with his chief of staff, the one engaging that. But if anyone thinks Mark Carney's not going to leave politics, go right back into the private sector as somebody who benefits from corporate capitalism, cronyism, you don't understand politics. That's unfortunately where we become. I believe Mark Carney is systematically destroying the Canadian economy. And he wants to pick up the shreds. And we'll deal with some of this because finally people are noting, including opposition leader Pierre Poilievre, that Carney wants to devalue the Canadian dollar. That's going to make all of you poor, but Carney richer, because Carney has his assets in the United States and around the world. Canada could literally fold up. Well, not literally. Canada could literally go bankrupt. Let's put it that way. And Mark Carney wouldn't be fazed by it. So let's have a look at some of the video. I believe there's an election coming up soon. I believe it could be the only thing that saves us from censorship and surveillance laws, at least in the short term. But we'll see. Let's have a look at this.
That's why in Budget 2025, we'll provide sustained funding to advance equality and inclusion across Canada. This serious long-term commitment will ensure constant progress towards equality and safety for women, for girls, and for 2S LGBTQI+ people. And I think for that, we should all be proud today. 5 will include generational investments designed to grow our economy and build a stronger Canada and even a stronger Canadians. Every person in our nation, regardless of their gender, regardless of their background, regardless of their identity, must be able to live free from violence and harassment and to participate fully in our country's success and in our country's future. The sad reality is that we're still seeing incidents of gender-based violence in our country, as well as rising hate and violence targeting 2S LGBTQ+I communities are a stark reminder that equality and safety, I insist equality and safety must continue to be defended. That's why in Budget 2025, we'll provide sustained funding to advance equality and inclusion across Canada. This serious long-term commitment will ensure constant...
Okay, I can't stand it. I'll show you the whole clip. But what a dunderhead. What a moron. Sorry, everybody in this country has equality under the law. We should not have special status for any particular group. And here we are again. The United States is on a completely different course against identity politics, against DEI, against judging people differently because they have a special interest. So Champagne comes on board. Now he's talking about putting it in the budget, wasting money on special projects like this. But not just that. He's intentionally putting Canada up there again as the premier woke nation of the world because that's what the budget's all about. Trudeau used to do this all the time. I am so furious about this. They've done it again. And this lame brain is at it again.
Progress towards equality and safety for women, for girls, and for 2S LGBTQI+ people. And I think for that, we should all be proud today. This is a moment in our nation history.
Incredible.
I want to follow up on the word generational that's been...
You know, I've said, this is what this guy gets enthused about, that we're spending more money on the LGBTQ. I can't even remember all the alphabet soups and letters and numbers in this. This is what he's excited about. But look at what he talks about, the actual economic state of the nation. We're no longer happy. Champagne has got the long face here.
Used describing this budget. You know, Banque Nationale says the federal debt is going to rise from maybe $1 trillion to $3 trillion over the next 10 years. We already took on a lot of debt during COVID. I just think of example of a girl or a boy who's 10 years old today, 10 years from now, you know, they could be facing a tax bill hypothetically that's triple what I pay, and in effect, you know, putting money in my pocket at the expense of youth. I mean, is this really a fair approach to future generations?
Well, what is fair is for us to present the budget in a different way this year. We're going to distinguish between spending and capital investment. People understand when you go and you pay your cell phone bill, this is spending. When you're buying a house, you're investing. What we're shifting is to say in 3 years from now, we're going to balance operating budget with the revenues we have. So to your example, we're making sure that your kids and your grandkids would have the kind of infrastructure in the country, the kind of housing in the country that can make them, you know, prosper in this country. And I would say, you may not remember, but in the words of the IMF, a very strong woman, Kristalina, which is the head of the International Monetary Fund. You may remember, I don't know if you were with me in Washington, but she said there's 2 countries in the world that stand out. She didn't mention 20. She said 2. There's Germany and Canada. These two countries have the wherewithal to support communities, to invest in their country, and I would say it's about time that we invest in ourselves. And I think that's what you're going to see. And investing in ourselves is to make sure we have the housing we need, that we can support women organization, that we can invest in the trade corridor that are going to make this country, supercharging, I would say, our exports around the world. And this is the best way to ensure your kids and my kids, by the way, when I was hearing the announcement, I have two daughters, we owe it to them. And this is what today is all about, and this is what next Tuesday will be all about, is about empowering Canadians, protecting our sovereignty, and building this nation like we've never seen before.
So that's painful to watch. But what is he talking about? Because as we'll find out, Tiff, Macklem, Governor of the Bank of Canada, says we're going to have to adjust our expectations. Mark Carney won't have to adjust any expectations. But we're going to have to be used to a lower standard of living. And that, if you separate the layers of bullshit from what, and excuse my language, because usually I don't swear in this broadcast, but I am fed up with the political talking points that are vacuous and that mean absolutely nothing except financial disaster. That's what's coming for this country. Mark Carney has it out for this country. And Champagne, he's been a lousy minister everywhere he goes, is merely become the clarion voice of that catastrophic economic plan. And we're investing in what communities? I don't want you investing in communities. Give us more tax dollars back. Stop spending our money. That's what Canadians want, not for the government to invest. You're not investing. You're wasting taxpayer dollars on your little projects, your identity politics to get votes. That's all this has ever been about. Now, listen, I think Tiff Macklem has a little more clarity and honesty in his assessment.
The living as a country, Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been. And unfortunately, what that means is that unless something else changes, our incomes will be lower than they otherwise would have been. They'll grow, but they'll grow along a low. This was the old path. Now there's a new path, which is below the old path. There are things the country can do to try to bend that curve up, but those aren't things monetary policy can do. These are more structural changes. I mean, fundamentally, as a senior deputy governor is hammered many times, we need to get our productivity growth up. And if we can do that as a country, we can bend that curve up. So, I mean, I think what's most concerning is that unless we change some other things, our standard of living as a country, Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been.
So there you go. So that's what you can expect out of this November 4th budget. Well, hopefully we can also expect in new elections we can get rid of these clowns in the Mark Carney government that are systematically destroying this country.
To discuss our monetary policy decision and our outlook for the Canadian economy. Today, the bank lowered the policy interest rate a further 25 basis points, bringing it to 2.25%. This was our second straight cut and reflects ongoing weakness in the economy and contained inflationary pressures. Today, we also published our outlook for the Canadian economy. Putting those two things together, we have four main messages. First, U.S. tariffs and trade uncertainty have weakened the Canadian economy. We expect very modest growth through the rest of the year, with some pickup in 2026. Second, while this weakness is restraining price increases, the trade conflict is also adding costs for many businesses, putting upward pressure on inflation. We expect these opposing forces to roughly offset, keeping inflation close to the 2% target. And third, to support the economy through this period of adjustment, we have lowered our policy rate by 50 basis points over the last two meetings and by 100 basis points since the start of the year. Finally, the weakness we're seeing in the Canadian economy is more than a cyclical downturn. it's also a structural adjustment. The U.S. trade conflict has diminished Canada's economic prospects. The structural damage caused by tariffs is reducing the productive capacity of the economy and is adding costs. This limits the ability of monetary policy to boost demand while maintaining low inflation.
Not exactly a rosy outlook, but I think Tiff Macklem is a little more objective about this rather than a government propagandist. And by the way, I just see that Blake Roberts, who was on the show last week, one of the great supporters of the Universal Ostrich Farms, and a fighter for freedom, is joined watching the show today. Shout out to you, Blake. We'll be talking to you after the show, and there's so much to talk about right now. But Pierre Poilievre has recently noticed what we talked about on this show months ago, that Mark Carney is trying to devalue the Canadian dollar. Now, we had a banker from Alberta on the show twice to talk about this. I thought some of you might remember that.
Something is missing from the Bank of Canada's main webpage. You see, they had this mission statement at the top of the page that was there for 20 years, and it read the following: "We are Canada's central bank. We work to preserve the value of money by keeping inflation low and stable." Keeping inflation low and stable. Suddenly, in May, only a few weeks after the last election, that mission completely changed and now reads, "More than a bank, we are the central bank of Canada." Period. That's it. No mention of low and stable inflation to preserve the purchasing power of your money. Well, isn't that convenient? Only a few weeks after Mark Carney is elected Prime Minister, suddenly the bank is not concerned with inflation. This, as the core inflation rate now is 3%. That's more than halfway above the 2% target, and it's rising quickly. And now we have Mark Carney nearly doubling Justin Trudeau's deficit, which means that the government will probably want to start printing money. That will be nothing new for Carney. He printed money like crazy when he was the governor of the Bank of England, causing a massive inflation crisis in that country and leaving behind a housing crisis that has shut British youth out of homes. Now he brings that same inflationist ideology back to Canada. Since he became Prime Minister, government spending has risen by 8% above the Trudeau levels that were left behind. This is nothing new for the Liberals, as while Carney was Trudeau's economic advisor, the money supply grew by almost 100%, while the real economy only grew by 18%. In other words, the cash grew 5 times faster than the stuff that cash buys. And now we see the government getting even bigger and more expensive. And suddenly, and inexplicably, the Bank of Canada removes from its headline mission statement the goal of keeping inflation low and stable. Now, maybe it's nothing. Maybe somebody who was junior at the bank suddenly got the keys to the website and went in and just removed those little details about low and stable inflation. But I doubt it. This is not just any section of the website. It is right at the top of the page, where it has been for 20 long years. But the consequence for you, if you're not an owner of Brookfield, is that the price of everything will go up. Your food, clothing, shelter, housing, everything becomes more expensive. That's why we have 2 million people lined up at food banks. It's why mothers put water in their children's milk to dilute it so that it lasts longer. It's why 35-year-olds are living in their parents' basements after a decade of Liberals. It is why everywhere you turn, the price of everything seems to go up. In reality, it's not that costs are increasing. It's that the purchasing power of your money is falling. And I believe with Mark Carney taking even more spending on than his predecessor, and with his forthcoming irresponsible spending binge appearing in the budget, you are again going to face the same inflation, or worse, than came under the earlier years of the Liberals while he was the economic advisor.
Because all that leads to a devaluation of the Canadian dollar, which could be further devalued in a formal move. United Kingdom is said to be on the brink of devaluing the pound. That has catastrophic effects, not for the rich, not for the upper classes, for the middle classes and the working classes, who don't have a great deal of money invested in gold, silver, other precious metals, real estate. That's untouchable. Inflation doesn't touch those things because you simply can sell them or retain them at your leisure. But we are headed for an economic catastrophe. And what does the government want to talk about? Censorship bills, surveillance bills, more money for the LGBTQ oppressed community. What nonsense that is. There is absolutely no oppression leveled against the LGBTQ community in this country. They are, in fact, celebrated at gay pride parades, in schools with the raising of the gay pride flag. Mark Carney says every day is Gay Pride Day in Canada. So I'm sorry, I see a disconnect here. But I can see the economy utterly failing.
Here's my point. I don't want to be at war with Canada. I don't want to have a trade war with Canada. I want us to continue to be friends. I made this suggestion to the new Prime Minister of Canada the other day, Prime Minister Carney. I'm going to make it again. And I hope this time he'll take it.
I'll get right back. If you don't know who that is, I should have introduced him. Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana, probably the funniest, easily the funniest senator on the Hill. Most of them haven't got a hell of a sense of humor. This guy is always witty, and I would say agree with him about 85% of the time.
Remember, if you want to be taken seriously, you have to act seriously. If you want respect, you have to act respectfully. Prime Minister Carney, you say that President Trump is not a fair trader. And I understand your point of view. I don't agree with you, but I understand your point of view. You've got to stand up for your people. If Prime Minister Carney, if you believe in free trade, then here's what you do. Make this offer today. Offer to go to zero tariffs in Canada on American goods. No tariffs. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. And challenge America to remove all of our tariffs on Canada. So the people of Canada can sell their goods to Americans without a tariff, and the people of America can sell their goods to our friends in Canada without a tariff. Zero tariffs. Let Canadian businesses and American businesses compete. Competition makes all of us better. That's one of the shared values that we have with our friends in Canada. Let American businesses and Canadian businesses go at it in a friendly, competitive way, and may the best price and the best product win. That's fair trade. That's free trade. And if Prime Minister Carney, if he wants fair trade and free trade, he will make that offer. And I don't speak for President Trump, but I'll certainly encourage President Trump to accept that offer, and I think he will. There's a way to stop this trade war. It's just to remove the tariffs on both sides. Remember what Mama Gump said? Stupid is as stupid does. Let's don't be stupid. Let's don't have a trade war. Let's continue to be friends. Let's get rid of these tariffs. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
And of course, I would add to that, let's get rid of Mark Carney and his jesters, such as Finance Minister Champagne and so many others. Now, what game is Donald Trump playing here? Here's a great shot of toasting Mark Carney. But you know, a toast can be taken in various. It can be a celebration. It can be an accolade. It can be a moment of praise, or it could be a moment of saying adieu, goodbye. Why did Donald Trump endorse Mark Carney on 3 occasions during this election, or was it 2? If I'm wrong about that, correct me. It was at least twice, including the day before the election in April. Why did he want Mark Carney as prime minister? Well, I believe it's not because he thought Mark Carney was a great guy, but I do believe it's because he thought he was going to steamroll him, and that's exactly what he's done. That's exactly what he's done. And to me, it's absolutely astounding. I got people trying to reach me here. I hope it's not important. No, anyway, it's absolutely astounding to me that Mark Carney really he tried to use Donald Trump, and I think he lobbied Donald Trump to get this contract for Brookfield, $80 billion for nuclear reactors. Brookfield's not getting it all, but they're getting a sizable portion of it. So here's Donald Trump's. This is from Truth Social. This is his post on Truth Social. It says, Mark Carney delegation has failed to secure any meaningful dealings on his trip so far and got denied meetings by the U.S. Not good. And of course, Donald Trump says, for those that are asking, we didn't come to South Korea to see Canada. He's closing the door on Mark Carney. He's closing the door on Canada. And I tell you, this is potentially catastrophic. But Mark Carney, I really believe it's part of Mark Carney's plan. It's difficult to read Donald Trump at times, but it's equally difficult to really understand Mark Carney because he never tells you what he's actually thinking or doing. Now, let's move to Pete Hoekstra here. And this, of course, he's in hot water because he allegedly swore at the Ontario Trade Representative. And Doug Ford, the author of Confusion and the author of the current dust-up with the United States over trade, because he put an ad out to Americans suggesting that Ronald Reagan was a free trader, Donald Trump isn't. Well, and as I've said, regardless of the historical accuracy or not of that ad, it's stupid policy in the present. But that's what Doug Ford does best. So he says, Pete, you've got to call Dave up. Dave is the trade rep, and apologize. It's simple. You know, the cheese slipped off the cracker. He loves that metaphor. I don't know what the hell it really means. And I don't know where he ever came up with it, but he uses it quite a bit. I get it. You've ticked off. You're ticked off, but call the guy up because you're a good guy and Dave's my champion, Ford said. And what does this all have to do? Well, Pete Hoekstra. Witnesses say that U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra launched into an expletive-laden tirade at Ontario's Trade Representative David Patterson. That's what it's all about. Now, here's an aside for you. I emailed Ambassador Pete Hoekstra's office yesterday, with whom I have fairly good relations, and I said, can the ambassador come on the show within the next few days to talk about this trade dispute and to talk about the ad? And the spokesman, I guess, or the EA, got back to me and said, we're not doing any interviews because of the government shutdown. I said, why is the ambassador on so many television clips right now? And he said, well, we didn't authorize any of that. So I had to leave it at that. But I'm going to ask his office if Ambassador Hoekstra can come on this show as soon as the government shutdown is off. Why he can't do an interview with me on StreamYard, despite there being a government shutdown, I don't know. Seems to me he could do that in his spare time because his job is to promote American interests in Canada and represent the Trump administration in Canada. And I would think he could do that without costing the embassy or the United States government a cent. But he is not going to do that right now. But so we'll keep trying. Now, want to bring you up to date on the farm. And of course, I did a show last night with Nico Lagan, who we do every week. We do the Conservative Corner. And I went on at length about what I believe is going on at this farm. There's a super blender, a bird blender on scene, and I do believe it's being used to dispose of the ostriches. Now, why would I say something horrible like that? Well, because we evidence it's on scene, it's been trucked in, it's there. Why would you do that unless you're going to use it? I mean, it seems to me you've got to be pretty stupid to think, oh, well, they just want it on scene. Maybe they're making massive milkshakes. I don't think so. So let's have a look at some of the stuff we just put up here. And this is encourage you to watch this from last night. I talk about this. I think ostriches are being liquefied and disposed of in septic tanks. I really believe that's happening. And good on you, Mark Nixon, for finding it. We'll be on the show, so I hope on the weekend. Can't do it tomorrow. We've got Katie on the show tomorrow. We're hoping to get Sean on. Link if you want to attend the federal court hearing next Monday. And this is all about vaccine travel mandates. And Sean has been successful in getting this heard in court. This is a huge step to further demolish the legitimacy mandates. So, no promises, but we'll see what happens. I find this fascinating because this is exactly what I predicted a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I was on Redacted last week talking about this very issue. Is that Native and Aboriginal entitlement is going to mean literally no piece of land in Canada is going to be safe. So it's got nothing to do with the fact that there might have been a treaty in 1855. It's just that Aboriginal entitlement is going to be interpreted because of the BC Supreme Court decision. The Cowichan First Nation owns virtually all of the waterfront land in Richmond, including a huge part of the Port of Vancouver, including untold numbers of private property. And I said, this is not going to end in British Columbia. It's going to happen across the country, wherever anybody. So what does Aboriginal title really mean? Well, look at this. Quebec First Nation tribe piggybacks off recent BC ruling, sues the governments of Ontario and Canada and the city of Ottawa, seeking title to thousands of acres of land in Ottawa. Good thing they all acknowledge it was true thousands of times. What does he mean by that? It means that every time people have congregated now at government meetings, at your local Rotary Club, they give land acknowledgement, First Nation land acknowledgement, saying that this land really does belong to the First Nations tribe that were here centuries ago. So you say that often enough, and they begin to take it seriously. And it becomes more than just some crazy commitment, it becomes some kind of legal statute. And that's exactly what's become. And here's another story about Cameco and Brookfield House to provide nuclear reactors. And I find this absolutely horrendous. Because, of course, our prime minister was the chairman of Brookfield. And I'm sure has tremendous investment in that company, whether it's arm's length or not, or whether it's a blind trust or not. Now, we showed you that great clip from Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. I think it was just wonderful. I want to show you this video from Chris Dacey here because it's interesting to say.
Definitely not Dacey.
So how many?
How many at least saw that? Alright, well, as you can see, there were some trees in the way. How's it look now?
Yeah, way better, man. Got the kill pan.
This is the Mona Lisa shot.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so the idea was we couldn't see down the chute.
Yeah, I
so
definitely
now
can
we
see
got
in
the
the
chute.
chute.
We can see every square inch of this property. Look at that.
Yeah, man, this is pretty good. This is the best we got yet.
There is not one place to hide, not even in the corner now because they closed that pen.
Yeah, I'm got basically everything.
Because, thank you for closing the pen. Yeah, thank you for closing the pen.
We got this back pen over here.
No trees.
Somebody must have really thought ahead to close that pen.
Yeah, God was thinking. Yes, this was a very long hike. It was nice though. I usually try and do the grouse grind quite a few times every year. And since I've been up here, I haven't been able to do it, so this has been a good substitute. Alright, man, well, you know, this is going to be the third round. It's technically actually like the fifth, but this will be the third round that we've submitted. So this definitely will be going in tonight or tomorrow morning as evidence. It's irrefutable. There's no denying this count. Like, we also, just so everyone knows, we have boots on the ground that are checking all of these structures to make sure there's a count. If any, there at this point, there is usually a zero count in these structures.
Two in there.
But even still, we're having someone check to make sure. And that's going to guarantee our shot and our count.
Yeah, I think we got pretty good here, man.
Yeah, so this is it, man. Like, hopefully maybe this will get the truckers moving. I know there's a lot of buzz going right now.
All right.
You know, whether it's that or there's actually a few other...
Thanks to Dacey Media for that. And do you see 300 ostriches in that picture? Do you see 200? There's something horribly wrong with the CFIA's figures. And ostriches just don't vanish overnight because a magic wand made it happen. Something is happening to these ostriches. We have proposed some solutions to that. We've proposed some reasons for that. We need the CFIA to be at least a little bit honest and clear and stop conning us what's going on at that farm. We've already talked about possible reasons for this. Why would you bring a bird blender onto the farm unless you were going to use it? Or at least wait until the Supreme Court tells you it's okay to start culling. If that's what you think is going to happen, well, then you still have to wait. So this is absolutely horrifying what's going on here. So encourage you to watch my show from yesterday with Jeffrey Rath of the Alberta Prosperity Project. And I was up early this morning writing a column about that interview and what could be the inevitability of Alberta independence for human events. I'm working on a Substack today on what I think is even bigger in terms of, if I can find this story we put out yesterday. Oh, by the way, there is the liquid blender on its way in. Thanks again to Daisy Media for finding that. That is, and I love this picture. I love this picture of the ostriches in front of the Supreme Court of Canada. I wish they were reporting back sooner with a positive result. And there's more evidence of it. This is it. I mean, what more do we need to show you what's going on this farm? And why is the RCMP chaplain on site? Is it that stressful for the cops? Or is it stressful because they're being forced to do something that they know is immoral and perhaps even illegal? Is that why? We will continue to follow this story. Some people are saying drop it. Don't bother with it because it's just about bird. No, it's about all of our freedom. And we're going to keep following the story till the end. As much as we're going to keep following this story about Brookfield benefiting from a U.S. government contract when the former chairman of Brookfield is meeting with Donald Trump and on bended knee, calling him a transformational president. We're going to be watching that too, as well as we're going to continue to watch the growth of support for Alberta independence. It's huge. We will. Thank you for watching today, folks. I really appreciate your time and attendance, and we'll do what we can to get our guests back. Tune in tomorrow because Katie will be on the show and we'll be talking about the blender. I'm on Redacted, by the way, at 4:30. A lot of you watch Redacted as well as this program. A lot more out there watch Redacted and don't watch this program. It's amazing how many people, when they see me publicly, say, I see you on Redacted every week. Oh, that's good. I love Clayton and Natalie. They're wonderful. And I appreciate the fact they give me a chance to go on their show every week to talk about Canadian news. And we will be talking about this Brookfield blowout, as well as what I believe is going on at the Ostrich farm, because I think this is very, very important for the future of this country. I'll be back in a minute after this brief break for our store. I'll leave you with this little tip at the end of the show here. If you've got money, if you've got disposable income, if you've got money, invest it in gold or real estate, anything but the Canadian dollar. It's going down. It's going to hit the floor. It's going to go beneath the floor. It's going to crater. You can see it coming. So if you've got that ability, do it for you and your family. Thank you for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow at 11 a.m. It's early on the West Coast. Give Katie and potentially her mom as well another hour to rest before they come on the show. So 11 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. We'll be back with more from Katie and the latest on the Ostrich farm. Thank you so much for watching. This has been David Krayden broadcasting to you live from Ottawa. Thank you for watching Stand on Guard.